If you've ever been to the beach and you get a mouthful of that ocean water by accident, you know the taste. It's that, whoa, super salty flavor. We all know the ocean is salty, but have you ever really stopped to wonder why? I mean, where did all that salt even come from? And why is it just there?
Okay, so let's really dive into that question. It seems so simple, right? But the answer is actually this incredible journey that takes us from the tops of mountains all the way down to the deepest parts of the sea. It's a fantastic geological story that's been unfolding for millions and millions of years.
All right, so to solve this whole salty mystery, we first need to get a handle on our main suspect. When we say the ocean is salty, what are we actually talking about? On a scientific level, what does that word even mean?
What we're really talking about are dissolved salts. Now, the most famous one is sodium chloride. Yep, that's literally the same stuff you sprinkle on your fries. But in the ocean, it's not like tiny grains just floating around. It's been completely broken down into these individual, invisible little pieces that are perfectly mixed into the water.
So if the ocean is just packed with all these dissolved minerals, where did they all come from in the first place? Well, here's the twist. The source isn't the ocean itself. To find the answer, we have to look somewhere much, much drier.
Believe it or not, the main source for all the salt in the sea is land, the rocks and mountains that make up the continents. I know it sounds totally backwards, right? But this is where our story really begins.
And the process that kicks this whole thing off is called chemical weathering. See, the rain that falls from the sky, it's naturally just a little bit acidic. And as it rains on rocks, year after year, century after century, that tiny bit of acid slowly but surely breaks the rocks down. It's like it's dissolving them. And that's what releases all the little mineral and salt particles that were locked up inside.
Now, those land rocks, they're the main character in this story for sure. But there are a couple of other really dramatic sources too. Deep down on the ocean floor, you've got these things called hydrothermal vents. They're basically hot springs. And even underwater volcanoes that erupt, just spewing minerals right into the water. It's pretty wild, but it's a much smaller piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so we've got the salt freed from the rocks. Great, but how does it get from a mountain, say in the middle of a continent, all the way out into the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean? It needs a ride, it needs a delivery system.
And that delivery system is what I like to call the river highway. It's a pretty simple journey. First, the rain breaks down the rock, releasing the salt. Then, runoff from that rain washes these tiny particles into little streams. Those streams all feed into bigger and bigger rivers. And those rivers act like these massive conveyor belts, carrying all those dissolved salts on a one-way trip straight to their final destination, the ocean.
And you've got to remember the sense of scale here. This didn't just happen over a few years. We're talking about a slow, constant delivery of salt that has been happening for millions, even hundreds of millions of years. It's this tiny, tiny trickle that over all that geologic time has added up to fill a massive salty reservoir.
And this is where we get to the really clever part of the story. If rivers are the salt highways, why don't they taste salty? Why can you drink from a freshwater river? Why did only the ocean end up this way? This question is the absolute key to the whole mystery.
Because here's the secret. The answer isn't about what the ocean gets. It's about what the ocean keeps. You can think of the ocean as this giant bowl with no drain for the salt. It's basically a trap.
So here's the huge difference. In a river or a lake, water flows in and then it flows out the other side, taking any dissolved salt with it. It's just passing through. But the ocean is different. Water gets in from the rivers, but only the water can get out. The salt is stuck. And that escape route for the water? It's a process we all know. The absolute key to this entire thing is evaporation. Here's how this great escape works for the water. The sun shines down, heating the ocean's surface. That turns the pure, fresh water into water vapor, which then rises up into the atmosphere to make clouds. But here's the trick. When the water evaporates, it leaves everything else behind. All those dissolved salt particles, they're way too heavy to make the trip. So they stay right there in the ocean, and over time, their concentration just keeps going up and up.
And that right there answers our big question. Rivers stay fresh because they're always flowing. They have an exit. Any salt they pick up is just a tourist passing through on its way to the coast. But the ocean? The ocean is the end of the line. It's where the salt gets dropped off, but there's no way out.
So there you have it. The whole salty cycle solved. Salt breaks off from rocks on land. Rivers act like highways and give it a ride to the sea. The sun powers this amazing evaporation engine that removes the fresh water, leaving the salt trapped behind to accumulate over eons. It's a simple but really powerful system.
Which leaves us with one final fascinating thought to chew on. Since rivers are still dumping salt into the ocean every single day, does that mean the ocean is just going to get saltier and saltier and saltier forever? Or is there maybe some other process at work, something that creates a balance we don't know about? That's a question for another day.